Hi, I'm Robyn Jackson. I'm with Mind Steps Inc., and I'm here with Allison Zamuda, author of Breaking Free of the Myths of Teaching and Learning. And Allison and I have been having a really engaging conversation about engagement, what it really is. And in our first installment, Allison really, kind of blew my mind wide open by talking about what is engagement really and what does it look like. And one of the things that Allison brought out that I don't think I'd ever thought about before was the idea that a kid who is compliant, a kid who does exactly what you ask him to do, may be a disengaged kid. And I think that a lot of times when we think about engagement, we look for behaviors that are obedient and compliant, and we think that's the same thing as engagement. And Allison has helped us see that that's not. So that's in our first installment, and you can get the link to that right below here. Now, in our second installment, Allison started talking a lot about now that we know what engagement looks like, how do we begin to design instructional experiences so we can get more engagement from kids? And she gave a couple of really great examples about how to do that. In this installment, we want to talk about hunting for opportunities for engagement. Yeah. And so Allison's got a really interesting take on how we as teachers and even as instructional leaders, and we can treat the idea of engagement and hunting for engagement as an observational experience where we find opportunities in our own practice, or if we're supporting other teachers in their practice, where they can get more engagement from kids, and it doesn't become this artificial thing. I think that the way Allison is proposing really makes it something that's very organic, very authentic to who you are as a teacher. So you don't have to transform yourself into some sort of, clown in order to get kids engaged, and you don't have to entertain kids, but you can actually find authentic opportunities for engagement. So Allison, tell us about how we do that.
Yeah, and so one of the first tips that I have is actually videotaping yourself. So you and I are videotaping ourselves right now, and again, it's not necessarily the most comfortable thing. No. But the great news is that you're not videotaping yourself. You're videotaping everybody else.
So it's a teacher sets up a camera on a tripod, or gets a flip camera.
Yep. It's a flip camera. It's an iPhone. It's even an iPad.
Yeah, and you just kind of set it up, then you just kind of record what's happening in the classroom. So what do I do with the recording?
So the recording actually helps you to visualize what's going on, in the outer world. The outer world is not in your own head, but how is it impacting the student learning? Okay. So when you're thinking about that, I gotta say, teachers are not very good observers about how it went in the moment.
No, because
we focus on the teaching, we focus on the clock, and sometimes we also focus on the one student or the handful of students,
the ones who are nodding. So
the either that or the on. So we're not necessarily very good because we perseverate on one or a handful of kids as the barometer of how the lesson actually went.
So the video helps me be a little more objective about my practice. It shows me things I might not have noticed in the moment. Okay.
And you can also start putting the camera on when the kids are actually doing the work. So it's not interesting necessarily to actually have you filming the kids taking notes. Okay. But the kinds of things happen when it's all on them, the type of work they're doing. That actually starts to show you to what extent are they truly engaging in this particular task.
So that's interesting because a lot of teachers do film themselves. If you're National Board Certified, you did the whole process. But the idea about filming the kids when they're doing something, and a lot of people like that can't be interesting. That's got to be no better than watching paint dry. Yeah. But you're saying that there are things that can be revealed. By filming kids working that you might not notice as you're trying to kind of watch them work and keep your eye on the clock and think about what you have to do next and all of that. Okay,
and I'm doing this great project in a school in Connecticut, a high school in Connecticut that was relatively traditional in their teaching practice. Okay. And so we introduced the concept of game film. We had a robust understanding of what student engagement looks like. And the idea is that the teacher does game film of themselves and then edits it down to 3 to 5 minutes. Wow. And then shows it to another group of teachers that are part of this cadre that we created. Right. And gets feedback and advice from them. So they design their own protocol, and they're actually starting to look for how the design impacts the learning experience. Wow. And then based on that, they give the teacher feedback and guidance on what they can do to continue to improve student engagement. So this doesn't actually have to be a supervisory moment.
No,
in
this
fact,
can
I think
be
it's
very
more impactful.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea about teacher to teacher. We
Yeah.
do something very similar with the cohort model that we have, where teachers are filming their own practice, and we can do this not just within a school but across schools. And then teachers come in and then they talk through. And we have a protocol we do. So that's a very powerful way for teachers to learn from other teachers and it not be supervisory. What other tips do you have?
I think another tip is really trying to do some kind of goal setting when you see something that's not sitting right with you.
Okay, so what do you mean?
So,
in the moment,
yeah.
I'm teaching and I see kids and I'm like, no, they're not really that engaged.
I'm seeing kids watching the clock. Do you know what I mean?
Then what do you're saying to, at that moment, set a goal for myself? Or?
Yeah, so if you videotape yourself and then, upon review, you start to discern a pattern of disengagement.
Okay.
Something that perhaps you're not necessarily pleased with.
Okay.
And so when you're trying to figure this out, this is really a design problem. What did I do to create those conditions? And what can I control to see if I make a change in this part of the particular task, assignment, etc., to what extent might that change the level of engagement in the classroom?
So you're really inviting teachers to kind of experiment a little bit, to kind of say, okay, this isn't working, let me try another thing, and then let me monitor that to see if that makes a difference.
Yeah, and you can say, this is working, but can we actually even make it work even better?
Okay, so let's say I do all of that, or I don't do all of that, and I'm just a teacher, I'm in a classroom, and I'm teaching, and I know my kids aren't engaged, and they're not even compliant. I've got the other kind of disengagement, that defiant disengagement. What advice do you have for a teacher like that who really is, it's not just the kids are watching a clock but they're obeying, but the kids are they're on their phone, they're talking, they don't want to hear anything I have to say. I try to use wait time and pause and get them, and they still don't want to engage with me. What advice do you have for me?
Well, I think it's very important to acknowledge that reality, and that reality happens in more classrooms that we would ever like to think.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have to really be honest with yourself in terms of how that impacts you, because that's an entirely depleting endeavor that you're doing day in and day out.
Absolutely. So how do I get them engaged?
Right. And so the notion of how you make them engaged, the instinct you have, I want them to be engaged at all costs, is not necessarily the right first step. I can't do the work for them. You have to keep saying that to yourself over and over again, because otherwise you have the tip sheet on the difference between engagement and entertainment.
Yeah,
right?
so I start showing the movies.
Absolutely. And so kids are very clear that they have this kind of notion of their job.
Right.
That you as the teacher need to be a good entertainer. Right. You have to be a clown. You have to be, you have to be theatrical. No. My job is not to entertain you. My job is to teach you.
But I'm trying to teach these kids, and it's not working. So, in the last few seconds of our time together, what advice, what kind of solid takeaway can a teacher who is trying to teach, and they don't want to be the clown, and they don't want to do the entertaining and the song and the dance with the kids, but the kids have just tuned out, and and some of it may be my fault, some of it may be just kind of kids who that's when you start getting people to say, oh, the kids are just lazy, or they're not interested, or they don't want to work, and they're being spoon fed and all these things. So now what do I do if I want to turn that around?
All of a sudden I'm going to start sounding like you.
I can think of worse things.
Right. So I'll tell you, like I need to tell you, start where they are.
Okay.
That's the first piece of advice. Activate their prior knowledge. I mean, you have to honor where they are. You can't talk over their heads.
Okay.
Certainly, the direction of going into the kind of entertainment world will absolutely fall flat. You can't bribe them into doing interesting work.
Right.
That may work for 15 minutes, but it certainly won't work, and it will drain your bank accounts.
Right.
So start with where they are. Actually try to figure out how to activate their prior knowledge. So that's the first piece. The second piece is give them an achievable challenge. So oftentimes kids are so incredibly bored or so incredibly overwhelmed by the task itself, they don't see themselves as functional or possible in doing that assignment.
Okay.
So I think that's the second piece. It's really trying to create that kind of incremental goals in service to that larger task.
Okay.
And third, it's all about the feedback. Really giving them action-oriented feedback so they can go after it and doing it again. So those three pieces are good first steps for whether it's a kid that's outwardly defiant or even a compliant kid, to actually give them a concrete answer to, why do I have to learn this?
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Robyn Jackson. I'm here with Allison Zamuda. We've had a great conversation. Check out the first 2 installments. You can get the link down below. Meantime, if you want to download Allison's tip sheet on engagement or the MindSteps tip sheet on the difference between kids who are engaged and kids who are simply entertained, you can go to www.mindstepsinc.com and download those tip sheets. You can find out more about Allison at, what's your website again?
JustStartKidsInSchools.com, and we'll put that link on the website as well.
Okay, and then you can also check out Allison's book, Breaking Free of the Myths of Teaching and Learning, and you can also check out the MindSteps books as well, and again, the link to that is right below. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.